It's like James Brown saying, "I'm black and I'm proud," back in the 60s. A lot of people were like, yeah, you know what? I am black and I'm proud. You know, when they might have thought it, but it needed someone to say it in a musical form to unlock that. My name is Jason Valerio, AKA Trackademics, and I'm a professional musician. We're here now, but there was a sound that came before us. There were people that came before us. Those people weren't too different from us, you know, when we listened to the topics that they were singing about. Music definitely is like almost a window, a connection to the past.
My name is Louis Watts, and I'm a photographer. I'm an archivist. Someone who's an actor who grew up in the Fillmore, Danny Duncan, and he said on a Friday night in the 50s and early 60s, from Hayes Street to Post, which is like, you know, that's half a mile, at a Friday night, it would be filled with black people, you know, going to and from the clubs, and that doesn't happen anymore because San Francisco is one of the few major cities with a diminishing African-American population because people can't afford to live here. When Pearl Harbor happened, the shipyards in Hunters Point and in Oakland and Richmond and different places were changing from making civilian ships to making ships and tanks for the war effort, and they needed people to work there. So people came from the South, they brought their interest in jazz and blues and black music and culture, and that's exactly why at its height it was called the Harlem of the West, because it was a thriving black population and community in the middle of San Francisco.
When it comes to the contribution of African Americans to modern music, the roots are so deep. All American forms of music have been touched by African Americans. You know, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. A lot of hip hop that comes out, we don't know that a lot of those choruses and hooks that they're doing, or a lot of lyrics they might be saying, are borrowed from older hip hop and borrowed from like soul music and jazz music.
A lot of musicians who had come to San Francisco to play, they weren't allowed to be able to stay in hotels downtown. And so they would stay in the Fillmore, and after they had maybe done their gig, they would come and there would be jam sessions. John Coltrane became a really famous musician who played with Miles Davis. And so this is a sort of evidence that someone who went on to become a very famous international musician sort of learned part of his craft by doing these jam sessions.
Just 100 years after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation that freed the slaves.
Check this out, man. We rolling this way. That march in 1963, that was a bit of nonsense. We ain't rolling like that no more. Matter of fact, the young black America, we rolling up with seminars, press conferences, and straight up rallies. Am I right? We gonna get what we got to get.
While you might not be able to do certain things you want to do because of the laws back then, music was something that was always a way to express yourself. When we listened to the topics that they were singing about, some of the struggles that they were representing through their art.
There's a direct link from the sort of means of expression from slave times, which were kind of field hollers and spirituals that evolved into the blues, evolved into jazz, they evolved into rhythm and blues and to hip hop. And there's a direct line that goes through time. And all of those from different times are the ways that we both determine who we are and express who we are and express what we're going through.
Being from the Bay Area, it's really all about intersectionality. And I really feel like in order to represent that type of melting pot, I like to take music from different genres in different places and kind of mix them all together. Music is really a reflection of people. If you can make music that a lot of different types of people will like, you know, those people may start to get together and form friendships and bonds and a whole new scene. And then that helps our communities get better. It helps our communities start to interact and be friends with people you might not have been friends with before. You know, the art that comes from here, a lot of it's always pushing the boundaries of what, you know, social boundaries, whether it's racism, you know, sexism, gay rights. The Bay Area has always been on the cusp of that. The wonderful thing about music is just emotion. You can make people feel certain things by just having certain sounds and certain instruments. And I feel like that's not gonna go away. As long as we can hear, we're gonna be making music.
This is my music.
This is our music.
This is the music of my people. The music that we worked for. The music that we were beaten for.
The music that we played when we were low.
The music that we played for joy. This is Black music history.
I knew I was German American and Austrian. I knew I had English and Welsh roots.
Well, I knew I was half Chinese, but I was really sort of unsure as to what the rest of the composition of my European ancestry was. My name is Taylor Michael Tan, and I'm a high school math teacher. I've traced my ancestry a little bit further on my mother's side than on my father's due to my grandfather on my dad's side being an orphan. On my mother's side, Northern European from the British Isles, and then also some of the Yugoslavian and Baltic area. But we don't really have a ton of information about who the rest of the family members were. In the past, I've done a little bit more research into my family history, but I've never really used any other official tools in order to learn more about my ancestry.
I'm Sabrina, and I am a doctoral psychology student. I'm half German. My mother is from Germany. I'm 5 or 4 generations back Austrian. So I used ancestry.com in order to get a fuller picture of my family. Talking to my parents and extended family aided the process of using ancestry.com. And the more basic information I inputted into ancestry.com, the richer of a picture they could trace back.
We want to understand where our ancestors have been, what they've done, and it makes us feel connected to them, and it makes us understand ourselves and our history a little better. Ancestry.com is unique because it has a combination of researching family history in a very strong way and the DNA component. It started about 30 years ago as a family history publishing company and grew from there. Looking from the point of view of the client, when they start to build their ancestry, they're going to start with what they know. So they will definitely know when they were born and where they were born. And then they've put down their parents' information. And if they have any ancestry information about their grandparents, they can put that into the tree as well. The wonderful thing about Ancestry is that the computer will put documents, connect them to the people you have named on the tree so that you will suddenly see how it connects. We worked very hard to get records from all sorts of archives, for example, from the National Archives, where they collected records, and they have collaborated with many other organizations and ended up with 20 billion records from 80 countries. So that's the first step. And if you hit brick walls, a great next step is to test your DNA, and that can really help the process along. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to test the DNA samples. We have so many samples in our database that it's very productive. Once somebody tests their DNA, they can compare their results to others and get very interesting information.
Definitely found some surprising information. I was very unaware that we had any Scandinavian ancestry, and that was pretty cool to find out. I know that my mom was sure that she was half Irish and half Yugoslavian, and clearly that is not the case.
It really gave me a rich understanding of the customs and traditions of my family. My great-grandparents worked on farms, were potato farmers. That was pretty new for me. On my maternal grandparents, they owned a machine shop. So those were pretty big insights into my family roots.
I feel pretty empowered by knowing more about my ancestry. It really shows that all of us are connected. I mean, I knew that everyone was going to share a significant portion of genetics with any other human being, but it was cool to see that reflected in the data. My family isn't super close with our extended family, so knowing more about my extended family wasn't really something that I was super interested in, but given the opportunity to do so, I feel like I learned a lot and am interested in looking deeper now.
It actually just made me more curious and want to use the system even more. I care about my ancestry because I think it brings a lot of insight into where we've been, where we've come from, and it brings a lot of understanding of how I've been shaped and who I am today.
Now that I know more about my ancestry, I feel like I have a better perspective on how to talk about race and genetics with my students, with the public, and with my friends and family.
Take one marker.
I am Akil Carrillo and I'm white and Latino.
At school, when you were talking about how people might not expect you to know Spanish or they read you as something that you're not, I'm just curious, how does that make you feel?
I don't know, I kind of like proving them wrong.
I grew up in Guatemala for the first 4 years of my life until I moved to San Francisco. Being mixed race makes me feel more comfortable in many different places. Over my life, I started noticing that there are a lot of mixed people. Most people are mixed, but they are hidden, so hidden that some people don't even know they're mixed.
The theme of ancestry has sort of been the guiding force in my life, I think since I can remember. The name that arose for me was Mitlan, which means death in Nahuatl, and Xochi, which means flowers. So I like to translate it in English as the person who brings transformation to death.
My name is Lauren Crew, and I'm a photographer. I'm half black and I'm half white, and I definitely identify with that. I know some people who identify as black when they're half, or white, or either or.
I often identify as a Chicana, Indigena, biracial woman.
When I started to try and like straighten my hair and cut my bangs, and I thought that was normal, but then when I would come home and my brothers and my mom and people would sort of say things like, why are you trying to be like all the girls at school? Being mixed, you get stereotyped sometimes from both sides. Certain people who are like, oh, you're mixed, you must be exotic and you must be, and you're just like, dude, I was born in LA. I guess from about 18 to about 30, 31, the body of work that I was working on was all about grief and loss after having lost my mother. And it was a very deep self-exploration of the experience I went through.
I had a classmate who came up to me one day and he told me, Angela, you're really lucky, that you're mixed race because you can see things from multiple perspectives. And I didn't quite understand it at the time because I was caught up in wanting to belong to something. And I saw my mixed race as a barrier of belonging because I didn't really identify with white American culture. My grandparents were migrant workers and they didn't like to talk a lot about their past. I said a prayer asking for guidance to reconnect to my ancestry, to reconnect to my indigenous heritage that would help me relate to Mother Earth. I like to think that my ancestors are always with me, and my ancestors are reminders to never let your mixed ancestry be a space to doubt who you are and your purpose in this world, and that we're as valuable just as much to one side of our lineage as to the other. And sometimes that's a greater responsibility because there's a lot of healing to do when different lineages come together. Being mixed race is an opportunity to beg the question and to ask, well, how do I fit into this story? I think it opens up a whole new world of possibilities around self-determination. And because of the struggles and the challenges, I hope it makes me more empathetic and more courageous to include other people's stories beyond my own.
For me, being mixed race is really a lucky thing because I can relate to different people. Being mixed is like having two lives.
I remember as clear as day. I began to wear a mask to cover who I really am. I was too shy to show people what I really felt and decided to not be me at all.
Hey dudes, why'd the chicken cross the road to get to the other side? You okay, dude? Later, dude.
May I be excused?
Okay.
What's this? Why were you hiding it?
Oh, it's just a mask. There's nothing of it.
If that's true, then why would you hide it?
Fine. I use it to cover when I feel too nervous to talk to anyone. I know this is off topic, but you guys seem so outgoing. Is there anyone in our family who was like me?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't always as outgoing. When I came here from the Philippines, I wasn't as confident as now. And to be honest, I'm not as outgoing as you think I am. I've just gotten a lot better at being around people. To be honest, you're a lot like me.
Okay. I like to thank my parents for helping me feel stronger while I'm at home. It makes me feel better after school. Not that I hate school by all means, but I feel nervous at times to talk to people except for my close friends. I guess all I really want to say is thank you.
Mom, I'm home.
Hey, honey, how was practice?
These shoes are dead, Mom. I can't run in these.
Let's see.
Why are you looking at me like that?
There's a pair of shoes that your dad never wore that I think they might fit you. They're in the red box in the closet upstairs.
Mom?
Jonas, can you join me? The first thing I need to tell you is that I love you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jonas.
This is real?
Yes, this is real, sweetie.
Why wouldn't you tell me?
You know, I guess I was afraid. afraid of making you feel alone, afraid of losing you. Can we talk?
I don't want to talk.
I love you.
She's my mother, and I'm her son.
He's my son, I'm his mother.
My name is Eliana Cervantes, and I teach 7th grade nonfiction studies here in San Francisco.
My name is Debbie Kajiyama, and I am a performance artist.
My mom was looking for more opportunities and a better life here. Most of her siblings had already moved to the United States.
So my great-grandparents came to the United States from Japan around the turn of the century.
My parents came from Japan. My father left Japan and first went to Peru. He went to work on a plantation. In 1920, he went back to Japan and married my mother, and she came over. And they lived in the Central Valley of California for most of their life. They were farmers. My mother was a farm laborer just as well as my father.
I knew that I was moving, but I didn't really understand that I was moving to a new country and what it meant to be an immigrant, but even an illegal immigrant coming into the United States. I think my 5-year-old brain didn't really grasp that yet.
What's interesting to me is to sort of look back through history and realize how much of that has impacted our lives today, my life, and even the younger generations today, with how we think about what we're trying to be and do in the society, and where all of that comes from, and kind of unpack it.
Well, I still remember when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and how scared I was to go to school the next day. I still remember that.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. This picture tells how the mass migration was accomplished.
We were put in one room with no partitions. Just all that was in the bed was a cot and an army blanket. No tables, no chairs, no running water, no sink, no toilet. We had to eat our meals in a mess hall, every meal. So we never ate with our families. We just ate with whoever. And most of the people stayed there for 3 or 4 years. The worst part was when we came back. None of my previous friends would talk to me or play with me. They acted like they didn't know me. I still remember my sister and I would walk home from school, and this high school boy, this white boy, would follow us in his car every day and yell at us.
The fact of the matter is it was incarceration because the majority of the Japanese Americans were American citizens. We're no longer referring to it as internment camps. We're referring to it as concentration camps because that's really what they were. When the Japanese Americans were incarcerated, it was done so very much on false information. And it was only proven decades after the fact that all the key information they relied upon as rationale to lock up Japanese Americans was completely, was fake. Using the Japanese American incarceration experience is an important lesson that can be used to combat a lot of what people are proposing right now.
There hasn't, before this administration, there has never been a time, at least in my life, where I felt unsafe as an immigrant in this country. There's always, been dislike or even hatred towards immigrants. I personally never experienced that until this administration. I think there's also a lot of stress as someone who depends on the immigration system here for my work and for just staying here. There was definitely a lot of stress on whether I would be able to stay here beyond this, this academic year of teaching.
Well, what sent Japanese Americans to the concentration camps was President Roosevelt signed an executive order, just one signature. That's all it took to send. Congress didn't have to do anything. He just signed an executive order and 120,000 people got sent to a concentration camp. That's scary. And what to me is more scary is our current president says it was the right thing to do. He has said that.
There's a fine line between being a witness and an actor. Like when you are a witness of something, especially something so unjust or tragic, that it sort of impels you to action. Like you have to start to think, okay, what is wrong with this situation and what is it that I can do in order to change the situation?
What happened was that I had a very nice teacher, and her name was Nina Cleveland. I still remember that. She wrote to me the 3 years that I was away in the camp. And so that's what a difference a teacher can make in your life.
I think the message that I would like to send is just that we are here to do something good, and I think that we can bring our experiences to do something good, and we're not here to, take jobs or do all this other stuff that's said in the media. So I think also growing up, realizing that you're not this bad person and you want to hold on to your culture, and then you want to use that to do something good.
More than anything, it's critical that everybody stands united and works together and not try to take care of their own, but stand in solidarity with one another. I think that is the most powerful weapon that all our communities have to combat some of the hatred that's going on in this country right now.
My name is Alan Jordan. I'm the chef around here. Barbecue, which is actually our specialty. The last 3 years we won first prize in the annual Black Cuisine. The lemon pepper, a lot of people do it, but they don't do it like we do it because we came up with our own spice blends and stuff like that. Everything you get here is pretty much original, and you won't find it any place else but here. My sister works here. I have some nieces and my wife. It's pretty much been family all along. In the 60s, when I was in elementary school, I started out cleaning up the place and stuff. And later on, I graduated into bartending, and my father taught me how to cook. They used to call this area Butcher Town. This is where most of all the slaughterhouses and tanneries and stuff, you know, originated right here in this neighborhood. A lot of the cattle and stuff used to come through there and right down here on 3rd Street. The pictures keep up with pretty much the history of the place and the neighborhood. This was pretty much like a gathering place. A lot of decisions, community people used to come here. 2013, they made this place a landmark. So pretty much we try to keep the character that it had when it first opened. We opened in 1959. So it's been around a long time, and people pretty much identify with the decor of the place. And, you know, like I say, by it being a historical landmark, we try to keep it consistent to what it was when we first opened. My kids, sisters and brothers, we all participated in, you know, making this place happen, even up until now. Me and my sister and my wife and, you know, our kids, nephews, nieces, all participate. So that's like ancestry, you know, continuing on. History with the people that come through here right now today, some of the people that come through here, their fathers and grandfathers and grandparents, you know, visit this place. So, you know, it's like our version of Cheers, you know, where everybody know your name, everybody feels at home right here at Sam Jordan's.